2, we're going to be talking a lot about the charting tools and techniques within ActiveTrader Pro. There's so much we can talk about. Now, that said, I do want to strongly encourage everyone take advantage of the Q&A feature that we have within Zoom. There's a lot of interaction that we can do. There's a lot of ways you can ask questions. Both Troy and myself, and we're happy to take the time to craft responses for you. For example, I just kind of want to ask the question, click the raise your hand button if you were able to do the homework assignment from last week. Don't worry, we're not, as I said last week, we're not going to call your parents. We're not going to tattle on you. This is, just for, purposes that, we've found that a lot of traders, learn better, different ways. And this is just one suggestion that we had to help you, kind of cement some of this material in a little bit more. That said, I have gone ahead, I've enabled closed captions. They should be coming across the bottom of your screen. It lets me know that my headset's working. I know when Troy talks, I can see, of course, what he's saying and everything. You can disable those if you don't want to see them. Now, we do have some recorded versions of our 4-week-long class. I know I showed everyone how they could find that last week and such. And for anybody that missed last week, at the end of the class today, I will show you where you can find some of the recorded content that we have. Now, that said, I do want to turn it over to Troy to kind of cover the homework assignment for us. But before he pulls that up, I just want to show everyone, of course, if you come here to fidelity.com/classrooms, or if you go to News and Research, Learn, they'll pull up the Learning Center. On the Learning Center, over on the left, you go to Events, Classes. That'll also pull up the same page, but fidelity.com/classrooms is a little bit of the shortcut to get you here. Now, all you need to do is scroll down, pick the course that's right for you, so to speak. Click the Learn More and Register next to ActiveTrader Pro. That'll pop this up. Now, you can, over here on the left-hand side, click on week 1, 2, 3 for the homework assignment. We're going to be covering the week 2 homework assignment. If you click on week 2, that will pop that up like this. Or you can, of course, click Learn More and Register. Learn More and Register will pull up our agenda and such. We can also download the homework assignment from here as well. Again, there are no slides, simply because this is all going to be demonstration within ActiveTrader Pro from here. Now, that said, let me go ahead and turn it over to Troy to kind of take us through the homework.
Yeah, good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending again on what time zone you're joining us from. Good to be with everyone. Last week, what we covered was all the different ways we can place orders within ActiveTrader Pro. So the call of the homework is really just being comfortable with pulling up different types of trading tools. We talked about things like the, multi-trade, the simple trading tool, the directed trading, how you can trade from a quote box, how you can trade from all the different ways you can trade from, even looking at your accounts and monitoring your positions. So let's go ahead before we get into, we're going to be talking about charts and the advanced charting capabilities within ActiveTrader Pro. Let's take a look at the homework. So first, what we can do, again, if you've been following all the different classes you can create, and we encourage you to create a homework layout. If you wanted to, again, just use a separate layout for answering some of these homework assignments without having to maybe edit some of your own preset layouts there. But what we're going to do is open the homework layout if you created one. If you don't, no big deal. Just don't save if you make any changes to your own layout. We talked about this in week 1. There's 2 things you usually got to save. We're going to re-echo this point later today, is you got to save your layouts and you got to save any changes you make to your charting tools. We'll talk about that more today. So we need to first set a default trading account. If you have multiple trading accounts, if you only have one account, there's only one account to be traded, so you don't really have to do that. So first things first, let's launch a trade ticket from the menu at the top of ActiveTrader Pro. I'm going to just change my settings here. I'm going to zoom in just to make sure everybody can see. So at the very top left, there's this little trade tool. I'm sorry, right here. It's the 2 arrows. It's very similar to what you'll see in fidelity.com if you're on your portfolio page. If you click that, it's going to pull up your default trading ticket or trading tool. This is the simple trading ticket or the simple trading tool. You could type in your ticker of interest for illustrative purposes, just going to throw in SPY, buy or sell, your quantity, limit, stop, trailing, whatever you're doing, and then preview send. Very, very quick and easy. So that's one way to do it. Let's go back to the homework here. Let's launch a trade ticket from your positions page. So again, if you're monitoring your positions, that would be under the accounts tab, positions. I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. Let's say we're looking at our Bank of America position. It's down just a tad today. Financials have been doing pretty well the last, maybe 6 months to a year. So let's say you want to close your position. We've got, 5 quantity in terms of stock, so by no means a large position here, but there's a bid and an ask icon here. We can click on the bid, and it'll preload a ticket for us. In this case, it actually, somebody must have changed our default trading ticket. It pulled up our directed trade ticket, but you'll see it pulled up an order to sell 5 shares of Bank of America at a limit, which was the bid price that I just clicked on. If we wanted to send this order, we could hit preview send that quickly, literally 2 clicks, and we could send out our order. So that was, again, a much faster way of making a trade as opposed to mocking up an entire trade ticket. Conversely, if we wanted to add to this position, say, hey, we only have 5 shares, maybe I want to buy in a dip, we could click the ask button and do the same thing, but now we are buying. When we were selling, the ticket assumed we were closing our position, so it loaded 5 shares. If we're adding, it's not going to assume how much do you want to add, so we'd have to say what type of quantity. Are we doubling down? Do we want to enter some generic quantity, some quantity specific to maybe our buying power or what size of position we want to do? So we would just have to enter that quantity and then again, preview send. That's what we'd have to do there. Back to the homework here. Let's do the same thing. We're going to do a trade ticket from the quote window. We'll go back to Active Trader Pro. I'm going to close my accounts or positions tool. I'm going to look at a quote box. I'm going to quote, we'll stick with SPY here just to illustrate this. And again, if we're looking at a quote box, let's see if we're taking a look at maybe some market, we're interested maybe in entering a position or closing an existing position. Same type of deal here. You're going to see these blue hyperlinks. The A is for ask, B is for bid. We could sell by clicking on the bid. We could buy by clicking on the ask, and it would pull up our default trading tool. Just to illustrate, I'm going to real quick go to trade, my trade settings. I'm going to change this from default or directed to standard just to illustrate this concept. Again, click on the ask for buying. If we do that, it loads a ticket right there. If we click the bid, the sell ticket, and we can enter in the quantity, and again, preview send that easy. So with the homework, we pulled up a trade ticket from the top menu of Active Trader Pro, from our positions page, from our quote box. Let's now open a multi-trade ticket, add a new order there. We're going to then delete a new order. We'll then go to the directed trade ticket. We were just looking at that. And we will open it and watch a certain ticker add a different symbol. We're going to then go to our orders and see if we can change the color of our verified cancel orders. So let's do that real quick, leaving plenty of time for what we're going to cover today. I'm going to go to trade, multi-trade. And again, this is another tool here. We talked about this last week. So we can click, we can delete orders, we can add a separate order, we can add several orders, we can delete one order at a time. And right here, we can select the account and say, I want to enter an order to, for example, buy 10 shares of SPY at the market. This is a day order, preview send. Very, very quick, very easy. We could change our order to a limit order or a stop. We could enter more orders. Again, just very, very easy tool there to use. Let's go to the directed trade. We looked at this just a moment ago. Again, it's the same type of a tool in terms of the basic trade data. It gives you a few extra functionalities. And it's also telling us a little bit about what's going on in terms of the liquidity dynamics. So don't be intimidated by a lot of the flashy signs and numbers. You'll see, for example, SPY is very liquid, over 15 million shares traded today. But all of this information is the same. We're entering SPY, maybe in order to buy some shares. The difference here is we can, for example, if we type in buy and we type in, let me take a look here, it's not clicking. Buy, sell, we can enter a limit order. For some reason, it's not, oh, we have to select an account. There we go. Now we can select a limit order. We could pick our price. Let's say if we wanted to buy at 548.35, so a little below the offer price. Maybe we wanted to route our order to Fidelity's dynamic liquidity management route in terms of where our order goes. Could we place an order for the day? You'll also notice we didn't talk about this a lot, but there is a functionality where this tool can be used to trade under certain circumstances in the extended hours. So that's what Day Plus is typically referring to there. So that's the directed trade tool. And then what was the last thing we want to do? We want to go to our orders and then see if we can change the color or update some of the settings on our orders tool. Let's do that. I'll go to trade and orders. We're going to go down here to orders. This is our test account. There's no orders currently out there. I'm going to right click, go to settings here. And you can see here, we can have a different color coding of different types of orders. For example, when we enter an order, it's not filling, and maybe later on we change our mind, we want to cancel it. So maybe we cancel a limit order or some stop order. So that a verify cancel, maybe we want that in blue, or maybe we want it in red. And maybe we want our filled in green. Maybe we want our open orders in orange. And then maybe we want partially filled in black, verify cancel with some partial fills. Maybe we'll pick purple. So at a quick glance there, if we want to color code just to kind of organize our different trades, we can do it this way. We can also, for example, change our order tool to show only certain types of orders. I'm going to hit cancel here just so this doesn't save. You could also look at status and you can update and say, all right, for example, it'll just show your filled orders. It'll maybe then show your verified cancel, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that's just a way to update and customize what type of orders you are seeing within Active Trader Pro. So Nick, that does it for our homework here. Hopefully that was it. That was easy or useful for people to follow. I know I went through that a little quick just to save us some time here for what we're going to cover today on charting. But the take-home message here is it should be easy for you to trade. You can trade in Active Trader Pro in so many different places, and there's so many different trading tools. The idea is it's customizable, and it can be as simple as really just 2 or 3 clicks. So it's meant to, again, add value to your trading experience in terms of ease, in terms of customization there. Nick, over to you to get us started with talking about charts.
Perfect. I'm just going to go ahead and steal your screen real quick, and I'm going to share a basic chart. And so if you pull up a chart in Active Trader Pro, this is likely the first chart that you're going to see. This is simply going to charts and the new chart. Now, once you've saved charts, this might not actually be the chart that pulls up. Like you can come here, we go to charts, and then I'll go to blank chart. And you notice there's some differences here. When I do this, we don't have tabs over here. There's no lines in the background, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, if I were to go to charts and the new chart, we see that the type of chart that it pulls up is this particular other chart out of the background because that's the one that is then marked as a default versus this other one that likely is what's going to be the default for you if you haven't changed any of your defaults yet. So a couple quick things I want to point out on this. Many traders look up here and they see the today and the 1 year chart and they feel that this is how you go back and forth between today and 1 year. This is not necessarily true because we could double click on this and we can say yesterday. We can call these tabs whatever we want. They just happen to arbitrarily have been called today and 1 year. So with this, what's important if you actually want to take it to a 1 year chart and you're on the today chart, if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see these different graduations here. We click on 5D, we're going to get 5 days. We click on 1M, we're going to get 1 month. 1Y, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and so on. Now, if you notice, as we shifted to 1 year, we now have a daily versus minute. If we come back over to 5D for 5 day, these are still daily versus minute. So frequency right here is going to describe what each of these bars are. We'll take it to 5 minutes. We can't have a shorter frequency than 1 day when we're on less than about 3 months. So on a 1 month basis, we can get about hour-long bars, 30-minute bars, but we can't get 5-minute bars. On a 5-day basis, we can get 5-minute bars, but not 1-minute bars. And looking at today, or 2D for 2 days, today and yesterday, we can get 1-minute bars. So if you want intraday information, you need to be looking at this 1 month or less, because if we click here to 3 months, this is automatically going to shift us to daily, because that 5-minute bar information isn't available. And we can see, we click on frequency, any of these changes will change our time frame. So we come here to 5 minutes, and it's automatically changed us to, it looks like a 2-day chart. We can see the time coming across the bottom, 6:20, 6:18, and so on with that. And that's important to understand. Now, we'll mention some different moving averages and indicators and such, and we'll talk about periods. And excuse me. And the reason for that is because all those periods are going to be based on the frequency. If you're looking at a 20-period moving average, it's going to be a 25-minute moving average. Or if it's on a 1 minute, it's going to be a 20-minute moving average, or 20-hour or 20-day moving average. Everything's going to depend upon this frequency right here. And so that's important. Understand that frequency changes the amount of information that's being shown in these bars. This over here changes the number of days that we're looking back. So let me give, we'll take a look at a couple other settings, and I'll show some quick changes with this. So we'll come up here to settings at the top. And this is where we can change some of our defaults. For example, if we want to have candlesticks versus bars, we can do that here. Or if you prefer the old school mountain, keep in mind, of course, the bars and candlesticks have more information than like a line or a mountain does, because we have the open, the high, the low, in addition to the closing information. So we'll come back to candlesticks. We can also show previous close. It's going to draw a line at the previous day's close. We can show extended hours. And now, as long as we're on a intraday frequency, we'll see the extended hours. We can also change the watermark and such. Do you want the watermark to be a lot thicker, a lot thinner? What about the grid lines? Do you want them to go away? To be really thick on here and such. And so I'll turn the grid lines off. We'll turn the watermark up just a little bit, so it's a little bit bolder. And we'll apply on this. We can see some of those particular changes. And we have this only on 1 day, but as we then go to 5 minutes, we'll keep this on 2 days, 5 minutes, and we shift to 10 minutes. We shift to 1 hour. Well, we can see that we're kind of losing information as this goes along. Now, let me take this back to 5 minutes though, and a couple other things I want to show. So we do, of course, have the volume pane down here. We can close this out like this. We can also come back up the settings to turn it back on, or we can simply right click. There's also the settings tab over here where we can show volume, hide extended hours, change linear to logarithmic right here, hide previous close. We can also change it from candlestick to open, high, low, close, etc., etc., etc. Now, one little hidden gem setting I like. Come here to settings. I have some close friends that have a difficult time telling the difference between red and green, for example. Some other friends, it's different colors. But if you do happen to have a problem with red and green, or you don't like the look of red and green, and let's say, for example, this is black like this, well, we can't tell the difference between them. Which one's the up bar, which one's the down bar? There are two suggestions. One, if you come here to the standard candlesticks, these were, of course, drawn back when you're just using a black pencil, a black pen or a pencil for everything. Or like I was showing here, we can signify, up can be blue and, down can be, this other color and such. It doesn't have to be red and green, so to speak. You can change the color so that it's a color that's it's better for you. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that so those settings don't take. But with that kind of shifts us over. That takes us through really most of the settings things that we wanted to address. That said, there are a couple questions that that came in. Troy, why don't you kind of walk us through some of the draw features, and I think that might also touch on one of the questions we had come in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, charts can be really customized to see exactly what you're looking to see. You can have multiple tabs there, as you're showing there, Nick. You can use, there's many different drawing tools. You can select different time frames, and you walked us through some of those basic settings there in terms of, again, if we want to see the kind of splash mark in terms of reminding us what we're trading, if we want to see the grid lines versus some people like to really take those out. I will say, casually, sometimes that can kind of give you these imaginary lines that you might be hyper focusing on when maybe, for example, those lines aren't as important to you. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm just on a daily chart. Again, you could change the time frames. And you'll notice here, again, we can resize our chart to our liking if we want to give ourselves a little bit more space, if we want to squeeze our chart, expand it, etc. But here's the drawing tools. So up here on the chart, you're going to see, again, all these different tabs. This is where Nick was showing us the settings. So let's look at some of these drawing tools. We don't have time to really show you all of them, but what's nice here is they're kind of segmented into more or less categories here. So you'll see these little vertical dividers. So for example, here's the different cursor tools. There is a crosshair tool. There was a question about, hey, can you default your cursor to track the price and the date? Well, actually, it does that all by itself. So here I just have the default, which should be, I believe, your normal mouse cursor. So if you take a look at the upper left-hand area, so for example, if I zoom in to where we are right now, you'll see here, I'm going to just unsqueeze my chart. You'll see here it gives us the date and then 4 different data points: open, high, low, close. So if I'm hovering over this red candle, which represents today's price action SPY, today is 6:20. It's loading our current time, 12:25. The open was 549.44. The high so far of the day has been 550 spot 12. The low, which is we're kind of close to the lows now, is 547.32, and the close is basically the most recent price. So again, if we hover over another day, if we're interested, it'll again give us the date, the open, high, low, close. You'll see there'll be a little bit of a black dot here, which will settle on the closing price. So if we're using regular candles, on a green candle, that's going to be the upper part of the candle. On a red candle, that'll be the lower part of the candle. So for our drawing tools, again, you can use the normal cursor. There is a little crosshair tool. Sometimes I've known that the system can sometimes have issues with this. I do use it from time to time. This one you click and you hold. So for example, if you're saying, all right, if I'm targeting a date in the future and I'm looking at maybe 545, what would that look like, for example, to today's price? So I'm actually hovering over 628, which is, I believe, the last Friday of the month. And I'm hovering at 545 and change. So if you're saying, all right, if you were doing analysis and saying, what would it look like for SPY to stay above 545 by the last trading day of this month, you know that's the point. You could do this with your cursor. You could also draw some lines at that point. So I'll go back to my draw. I'm going to deselect crosshair. I'm going to go back to normal. And just an FYI, some of these you might not use too much. If you have a lot of different drawings, there's an eraser. You can click on the eraser and individually remove some of your drawing tools. You can also just in one click clear all of your drawing tools. So now that we have that out of the way, let's go through some of these. I'm not going to have time to touch on every single one. This first section is just lines. You can do a trend line, which is basically a diagonal line. You could do a horizontal line. There's pre-built support and resistance lines that have a pre-built color. You can make any horizontal line and put it anywhere you want, and you can also change its color if you'd like to use a different color. You can also draw a vertical line, change its color as well. So let's look at some of these real quick. Trend lines are very, very popular. We use these a lot with some of our trend-based analysis. So for example, if we're looking at SPY, maybe we want to connect some of these lows, and it's not perfect, and that's going to be okay, or perhaps dependent on our own persuasion or methods. Some people might prefer a little bit of price interaction. Some people might prefer to use, again, just the ends. But you'll see I just drew a line here. This was just a trend line looking at some of the lows. Maybe I want to draw another trend line looking at some of these recent highs. You can see, for example, we were in a downtrend very briefly for about, since about the end of March of this year until about the beginning of May. So price was making lower highs. It made it, let's see, once, maybe twice, three times. We could again draw our line a little bit closer, might have got a little bit more interaction, but price broke out of this concept of a downtrend and began this uptrend as illustrated by this trend line. Again, we can, if we don't want diagonal lines, we can draw horizontal lines. We can draw a vertical line. The vertical lines, again, we all use these differently. A vertical line can be good for looking at time segments. So maybe we want to see, all right, what has the market done from this date on? Or again, I was talking about using the crosshair tool. Maybe we want to pull this line to some significant date in the future. So for example, June 28th, I believe that's the last Friday, and it is the last Friday of the month. So maybe we want to see, all right, what could happen between now and the end of the month in terms of trading? We could draw a line here, this horizontal, we can drag it. We can also click into it and actually select the exact value. Maybe I want to say 545. Maybe I want to use 540. I'm going to type in 540. I'm going to make my line thicker. I'm going to make it dotted. Maybe I want to have it stand out a little bit more. You can see here 540 for SPY is right at this recent gap or bounce point. So maybe that's a significant level that I want to watch between now and the end of the month. So again, at a very simple, from a simple glance here, just drawing some lines can be very helpful for not only simple, but even more complex analysis. So I'm going to remove some of these lines, one click, clear all. Now I have a clean chart to go off of. There's a number of Fibonacci drawing tools, not going to spend too much time. Fibonacci is a significant ratio that we see in nature. It was developed in mathematics by creating a series of just adding the two preceding values. A lot of times, if you look at the percentage ratio of these values, there are some significant values that you see, for example, in nature and in different areas, which are interesting. But a lot of times traders will look at, okay, how about these ratios in between highs and lows? And they can use it for concepts of retracing trend or breaking trend. So that's a popular tool. You can do this for price. You could also do this vertically with time to understand the ratio of certain time segments. That might be helpful to some, maybe perhaps not as helpful to others. You could use something like a trend line and say, okay, well, maybe if this trend line breaks, for example, there was a very strong trend line right here that broke, but the broader term trend still stayed intact. So, for example, this line was very strict. You can see it broke, but at this very last one, we actually held. We broke briefly, but then quickly retook. So this could be a way of giving, maybe you want to give a very strict trend a little bit more room or a little bit more volatility. So this could be a way of, again, looking for trends that are softening, but maybe going to hold up at some point. Again, if that's something that you want to do, there's many different styles and approaches there. There's a number of different Fibonacci tools. Again, don't have time to look at all of them, but we would also, there's things like a gain fan. You can take a look at those and use those for your trading. Here's a regression channel. This is another useful tool just to look at trend and follow. For example, if we look at the lows to the highs, you can see prices more or less staying within this concept of a trend channel. So when you see a very strong trending market, that could be a helpful way to visualize trend. Again, you won't always see these nice, clean, perfect trend channels. So at those times, this tool may not be helpful. The last thing is the shapes. So you'll see here right towards the end, there's going to be some rectangles. You can do a circle or an ellipse. You could do a diamond shape. You can do a triangle. I would say, again, this is a little bit of stylistic preference here. I would say the circle and the rectangle are the ones I tend to use more often than some of these other tools.
Yeah.
The rectangle can be really good for highlighting an area of support and resistance. We know it's not always an exact line, an exact perfect spot, but maybe it's more of a zone. So I think the rectangle does a great job of highlighting that. Or maybe we want to see a key, we want to highlight the key area. For example, maybe we're taking note of this big red candle, so we want to circle it. Or maybe we're trying to be reminded of where the bottom was. So maybe we want to circle some inflection point. Again, it's just a circle, nothing magic or special here. But again, when we're doing our analysis, some of these drawing tools can really help us with some of our charting. I do use the diamond occasionally. There's things like a diamond reversal or a diamond continuation pattern. Sometimes I'll just circle the areas. I can actually draw a diamond. I can, again, just draw a rectangle. There are some text notes you can add. These can be helpful. Be cautious because some of these tools are a little bit finicky. So for example, if you're giving yourself a reminder here, like for example, watch the 540 support or something like that, you can set this and save it. You can also make it bigger if you want to make it stand out a little bit more. Just be careful, for example, with the text tool. I noticed that it will keep putting on more text boxes until you come back here and click your cursor. You might want to, again, reposition this, resize it. But if you save a chart, maybe you did a lot of analysis and you come back to it and you forget. I don't always forget, but if you want it to be reminded, that could be, again, a neat little tool to remind yourself of the analysis. At the end of the day, make sure, and again, we're going to re-echo this a couple times here, make sure you save your chart. If you do a bunch of drawing tools, and again, this is tab specific, if I open up a new tab of SPY, you can see it's brand new, it's clean, and some of my settings have been changed. So you can have many tabs. I'll often have a tab that's just for drawings, where I'll do some of my drawings on a plain chart. But again, you have to save them. If you don't save your chart, when you close either the chart or you close Active Trader Pro and you come back, your drawings will not be there. So make sure, it's two things you got to save. You got to save your layouts. Your layouts is just what tools you have open and how are they arranged. And you got to save your charts. What type of changes have you made to your specific chart? What's your default chart? What kind of drawings and indicators are on your chart? You got to save those. If not, you'll come back and they will not be there. Trying to save some of you out there some frustration with that. I've often discovered that the hard way myself. So Nick, maybe you want to talk to us a little bit more. Are there any specific drawing tools that you really like? Maybe you want to talk to us a little bit more about indicators or some of the other features here of the chart.
Really want to kind of reiterate what you were saying on that there are some really useful drawing tools there. I know one of the most popular ones that we'll use on the desk is we do take a lot of advantage of drawing a box, for example, really highlighting that support resistance zone, versus a line, so to speak. Now, with that said, I'm just going to take this back over to a 6-month basis and such, and let's start to add in some indicators to here. So I was pretty explicit earlier, when I was addressing that a lot of these indicators are based on periods. It's a 20-period moving average, a 50-period moving average, because everything is going to depend upon the frequency that you have down here. Now, let's go ahead and start to add a couple indicators to a chart. So one of the most common indicators that traders will start to use at first is a simple moving average. Now, as you mouse over all these other indicators, it will give you a demonstration of what it looks like below the chart. Many of these indicators are understudies, like Bollinger Band width is an understudy. We actually come to Bollinger Bands. Well, Bollinger Bands is an overlay. It overlays it on top of price. But let's scroll through and let's look for a simple moving average. We can see right here, a simple moving average. Now, I'm also going to come down here. I'm just going to remove volume real quick. But let's say we want to add in more indicators. So if we come here to indicators, we can also come here and use the type to search feature, which is actually one of my favorites. So if we simply type SMA or simple moving average, we can add it that way. In addition to looking for it alphabetically, we can also click on recently used if we've recently used it. Add it again. So now we have 3 different simple moving averages on the chart. And if you notice that you have SMA 20, SMA 20 bracket 2, and bracket 3. That's because they're pretty much identical. We have a second iteration and a third iteration of SMA 20. Let's say we want to change this. Well, we can actually left click on this, come here to modify, and we can change this period. Let's change this one to 50. We'll then hit apply. We can come and notice this bracket changed from a 3 to 2. Modify, make that 200, hit apply. So now we have a 20, a 50, and a 200 period moving average. And since we're on a daily basis, these are the 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day moving averages for SPY. Zoom out to a 1-year basis and such. Now let's come back into a today basis on this. Now these moving averages are a 20-minute, 50-minute, and 200-minute moving average. They've shifted since our frequency has shifted. Coming back out to 1 year, let's say we want to add some other indicators to the chart. We come up to indicators. We'll click on A through Z as opposed to recently used. Another popular one might be a momentum-based indicator, RSI. You can simply type to search, or we can look for it alphabetically through the list if we so desire. But one of my favorite ways, again, is simply typing to search. And we now have an RSI added to the bottom of our chart. There are a lot of different ways that we can customize RSI. We can come here, modify, and let's say we wanted these lines at 60 and 40 instead. We can do that. Now here's a little kind of tip and trick that we'll do in some of our advanced technical indicators classes. We can actually come back here to indicators, RSI, and we could add RSI again. And I'm actually going to come here, we'll modify it. And if you notice, it added the lines at 70 and 30 again. But we'll shift these colors back to green and red. And we can even change this RSI color back to blue. And voila, we now have lines for RSI at both 60 and 40, in addition to 70 and 30. Another little tip and trick you can do, we'll modify this again. Let's change this opacity to 25%. So now this is going to highlight every time it's over 60 or below 40. And we can do the same thing, modify here, but make this one 50%. So you see it gets darker as it goes over that. A third thing I've seen traders do is add a third RSI to get that middle 50 lining here permanently. Because if you're to draw the line like this, you can come here and you can draw on your understudies as well. So you drop that draw line and we change symbols. Well, that draw line doesn't copy over when you change symbols. Or we come back and we see it's still there. Something else you can, of course, do with indicators is we can do indicators of indicators. Come here, we'll modify, we'll add an indicator. And let's say we want to add a exponential moving average of our RSI. It'll automatically add a 20 period. We can modify it. And maybe we just want it to smooth just a little bit. We'll make that 3 period. We'll make this dashed. We'll make this a little thicker so we can see it. And now we have an exponential moving average of that. And we can even change just a little bit. Make it red so it kind of sticks out a little bit more if we so desire. And I'm showing some of this because we come back to indicators, MACD. We then have, a lot of similarities with that, where the signal line on MACD, looks like it didn't take that ad. The signal line on MACD is nothing but a moving average of the MACD and such. So we can do these things to, make it more complex to get these additional signals if that's what we're so desiring. And of course, showing the draw, you can draw trend lines on this, on RSI, on MACD, all these different things. And they do, of course, you can stretch these taller, narrower, but just keep in mind, if you add too many of these understudies, well, what's really the important thing? What pays? Price pays. And you start to kind of minimize the important chart up here, your price chart. So much you can do to customize your indicators with AccuTrader Pro. Now, we always get asked, do you offer A indicator, B indicator, or C indicator? And there are some interesting ones out there that are honestly they're proprietary indicators that you're only going to see it with one particular service because that's their proprietary indicator. Though frequently you can replicate something similar because maybe they've taken one style indicator and they've made a small change to it or something like that. And you can kind of replicate some of these things. And this is where we get into something like, we'll minimize RSI. We'll come here to indicators. We'll do PPO, or percentage price oscillator. Now, percentage price oscillator is very similar to MACD. The difference is it's based on percentage change versus raw changes. And so if you start to look at a much longer time frame, you can actually see some significant changes. Let's go to Tesla as opposed to SPY. Where MACD looks like a flat line, you still get those changes in percentage price loss later. But if we shift over, go back to 1 year, there's not a signal line on PPO like MACD has the signal line. Well, that gets into what I was saying about you can add an indicator and you can add something like what MACD has, a 9 period signal line like this. MACD is at 12 and 26. You can then make this 12 and 26. So you can start to really replicate and duplicate this and create your own indicator if you so desire, or at least get something that's similar to maybe what somebody else has on somewhere else that is proprietary. So there's a lot of power that you have on doing indicators of indicators, customizing your indicators. It would cost you, before you start to customize something like MACD, there's a reason why they use the numbers they use, and you'll want to be really, really, really familiar with those particular indicators before you start to do that. Now, with that, we do want to cover a little bit some of these other tabs: events, compare, technical analysis. Before we'll wrap up today's session, we'll kind of talk about saving charts, but we have about another 10 to 15 minutes for these last 3 tabs. Troy, there's so much we could talk about when it comes to indicators. Anything you might want to add before we talk about some of those other tabs?
A really great resource, Nick. I think you might have mentioned this. I'm just going to re-echo it here. Is on fidelity.com in the Learning Center. There's also some links within Active Trader Pro. There is a technical indicator guide. So make sure you're aware. And again, we talk about this in our technical analysis class. We hope to you join us if you haven't joined us before. Make sure, and we often will get these comments from clients, make sure you know what your indicator is doing. Every indicator is going to use basically 3 data points. It's going to use price, time, or volume. That's really all we have in charts: price, time, and volume. That's it. So
That's it.
If your indicator is a momentum indicator, well, you might not need to have 4 momentum indicators on at the same time. They're probably telling you the same thing. Yeah, they have different methodology, slightly different calculations, but make sure you are not missing the forest for the trees with these indicators, because they can be very helpful. But make sure whatever setup you're using, we do have classes or coaching sessions. We'll talk about having different multi-indicator setups, or making sure what a multi-indicator trading system can look like. Just make sure whatever indicator you're using, it's helpful for you. If it's confusing you, it might not be helpful, and you might be ignoring the more important basic inputs, which is price, time, and volume. So, but make sure you use that technical indicator guide. A lot of clients don't use that. If there's a new indicator or an indicator you need to brush up on, it can be a great little short read. You can combine that resource with other third-party sources, not endorsing, recommending any, but if you need to brush up on an indicator, that can be a great way to do that.
With that, Troy, can you go ahead and step us through the things that might be advantageous to a trader in the events tab, and maybe how they can use the compare tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So with events, one of the big things is earnings. Every company, as far as I'm concerned, unless we're talking maybe like an ETF or something like that, every stock has earnings. And actually, I'm on an ETF. So I'm going to switch over to, how about NVIDIA? Just using this for illustrative purposes. This is the company making the news. Interesting, having a little reversal today. I was actually looking at this earlier in the day and it was up. It's now down, and some of the markets have actually turned around a little bit. I'll actually be in the midday market briefing to break down some of these topics in just a little bit here. But if we go to events, what do you see? You see splits. Stock splits can be an important aspect, and actually NVIDIA just had a stock split. Dividends are an important aspect. So if you're a dividend investor, that's going to be important to know when have dividends been paid. And actually, that's not a perfect way. There's other ways you can do this. But for companies that have been paying really high dividends, if they've ever missed a dividend, this is one of the little shortcuts you can usually use to see when a company has cut or missed a dividend. Tax lots, not super helpful. If you have like a dollar cost average position that you've built, it'll show you some of those positions. You could use that in like a positions tool though. So again, it's just my opinion. Everyone stylistically has their own preferences. I don't find that super helpful on a chart. I'd rather use the positions or accounts tool. So splits, dividends, and earnings. Those are the things that I think are most helpful. So let's first just look at earnings. So I have that clicked here. You're going to see these little, I'm going to go for about 2-year chart. So we have a number of these different arrows. At a quick glance, in your analysis, it can be very helpful to know how has a stock performed within its last couple earnings. These are big fundamental catalysts. Nick, you're a CFA, right? Yourself and myself, we tend to talk a lot about the fundamentals. Knowing, the past is not going to necessarily help us predict the future, but knowing that, hey, if we look at the last couple earnings, you can see very quickly that stocks have performed positively. That's telling you that likely they're beating the numbers or they're raising estimates or there's something that's been positive in the last couple earnings. So, for example, NVIDIA, last time it had earnings, it had a gap up and then a major push. Prior to that, it had a gap up and then a push before settling in a little bit. If we look at the last couple ones, it went about sideways. Last one before that, it went sideways to down. A lot of these previous earnings, you had the gap up, push higher, gap up, push higher, higher, maybe go a little bit lower, tuck in a little bit. So knowing that history can be very, very helpful. So that's the earnings. Now, be careful with the green arrow. There's a little guide to this. You can right click, go to help. I believe if it's green versus if it's red, that has to do with not if it beat estimates, but if its numbers are higher than the same period, I believe, last year. Nick, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there.
You are correct with that. That a lot of traders they misinterpret that a green means that it beat earnings, and all it means is that earnings for that quarter was more than the same quarter previous year, and so quarter over quarter, year over year, fourth quarter 2023 was higher than fourth quarter 2022 is all that means.
Perfect, perfect. I always get that wrong, so I appreciate the validation there. But with NVIDIA, for example, it just had a 10-to-1 stock split. So this was a pretty big stock split. So all I did is go to the events and I clicked splits. Let me take off earnings there if we want to just focus. For example, if we look at a 5-year history of NVIDIA, we can see it's actually had 2 different splits. It had a 10-to-1 that recently just happened. Maybe you went on vacation. I actually was on vacation recently myself, and you come back and you're saying, wait, NVIDIA was $1,300. Why is it
Did it
133?
crash?
Did it crash? And no, it didn't. It had a 10-to-1 split. So if there's any confusion there, sometimes this can clear up that confusion. But if you go back a few years, in July of 2021, it actually had a 4-to-1 split. So often companies that are successful with increasing share prices tend to, over time, have some splits just for the concept of making sure they have proper liquidity for their shares. Some stocks will do it to make themselves good candidates to enter certain indices. For example, we know the Dow Jones is price weighted. So some of these big companies say, hey, I want to sharpen my shoes and polish my outfit, put on my Sunday best, so maybe I can make the cut to get into the blue chip index. So you'll see a lot of that. But splits can help. And then what's the other thing? The other thing is dividends. So dividends, depending on the company, usually paid out quarterly. Some companies will pay out special dividends or annually or some other time frame. Let's go to a company real quick off the top of my head that I know that cut dividends at some point or skipped them. Let me go to General Motors. And again, not picking on a company, just want to point out this aspect here. It's a 5-year chart. If we go back on General Motors, steady dividends, suddenly what do you see? You see a big crash. What was that? That was COVID. All of a sudden, you see these little gray boxes that D, those are dividends. Well, what suddenly disappears? You don't have any boxes with Ds. So that means they were paying dividends and then they stopped. So this happens with companies. This is why dividend investing is very, very popular. There's a lot of merits for dividend investing, but this is one of those risks. A company can be under pressure, can suddenly say, we can't pay them. We don't want to pay them. Our best way to add value to shareholders is to preserve our company, focus on profitability. and maybe perhaps not pay out those earnings, but instead maybe reinvest them. There are going to be other companies that say, no, we have a very steady business. We don't need to. So we're happy to pay out those dividends. So at a quick glance, without even doing a lot of complex research, you can see we were paying a 38% or 38 cents per share quarterly dividend. Suddenly we stopped during COVID. And then right about 2022, so about 2.5 years past COVID, we reinstated a dividend, but it was only at about, call it about a fourth. A little less than a fourth of what it was before. So it restarted its dividend program, but it doesn't want to do that again and make that same mistake. So they're starting with a much smaller dividend. And as of right now, we're still paying about a 12-cent dividend. Again, it was paying a 38-cent dividend. So again, it was started at less than a fourth and still about a third of what it was paying pre-COVID. So that's just a way to kind of see that. There's other tools in Fidelity.com you can use, but that's a quick way of just showing the splits, the dividends, and the earnings, just to overlay those on your chart. It can be, again, helpful when you're doing your analysis. If understanding, hey, did a company split? Should that should that change anything at all? And did a company maybe cut its dividends? That's just one way and one area to look. Actually, General Motors hasn't had a split in the recent past. Nick, I know we're coming up on time. Any other last minute questions or thoughts or things that you want to share? I know we didn't have time to go to this technical analysis tab. There are some pre-built third-party data in here. We can, if there's key patterns that we like to look for as traders, we know patterns don't always complete themselves. And even after they complete themselves, even if it's supposed to be a bullish signal, doesn't always follow up that way. If it's a bearish signal, it doesn't always follow up that way. But there's lots of ways we can look and pre-screen for some of these classic patterns. Anything else you want to add here as we get ready to close, Nick?
Sure. A couple quick things I want to add on here. So first, we're asked about renaming some of these tabs. If you simply double click on this, it'll let you type in and change the name. So I just double clicked on where it said untitled, and I can change that to test, for example. So I'm going to shift back over. I'm going to open up a blank new chart, and I just want to really quick hit a couple things here. So we'll use SPY again as a demonstration symbol. Compare. If you want to compare this to another symbol like the NASDAQ index, we can simply click NASDAQ. It will compare it to the NASDAQ. We can this does default to a percentage comparison. There's only one other symbol. We can do it where it's a dual axis where we have the other price. Once you add in a third symbol, unfortunately it won't do that. You do have to add something to the compare tool if you want to do like a relative strength RSI comparison as an indicator, because if we then remove this compare, we'll left click delete, you're then going to get this error. Please add a compare symbol to be able to do that. So compare tool is very, very useful when comparing like an individual security to the broader market or its particular sector. This technical analysis tool does also automatically will show you like algorithmically some support and resistance levels on here. Keep in mind it's based on yesterday's close. So you might see something where we're above a resistance point because we're up today, or we're below a support because we happen to have traded down. We can of course left click on this. We can then modify this to be short term, intermediate term, longer term, etc. With that, we go shorter term. We'll see this support comes up because it's not looking at data so far back. Longer term can change things. Of course, we'll hit apply for that. And then with this, what Troy was saying, technical analysis, patterns and events, this will pull up a lot. This can be a great, great, great tool to learn about different indicators. This gives a definition of what is short term, what is intermediate, what is long term. We'll hit select all, so it selects everything, would apply. Keep in mind some of these tools only work on securities, specific securities. They won't work on an index. So if you're trying to chart SPX, they won't work on SPX, but they will work on SPY, which tracks SPX. So this will do a couple of things. Like if we mouse over this will kind of explain some of this. Say, bullish event on MACD. Left click, this will explain this, but this is also showing that this is on a weekly pattern, so we can't add it to our chart. You mouse over this one right here, a double moving average crossover, 21-day and a 50-day. We'll left click. This will explain the significance. Now we can click add to chart. This will actually add the indicators and then draw a box around where it had the crossover on our chart so we can see. Once a signal's been invalidated, it actually gets removed and dropped off. And so over here, it did then show the bearish side of that. But then once the bullish cross happened, it removed the bearish one, and now it has the one. And so that's why there's not a lot over here, is because maybe there was a bullish event that then got invalidated because of a bearish event, that then got invalidated because of a new bullish event, and so on and so on with this. Now, these technical analysis events, might show chart patterns. It might show other things. These are what our stock screener searches for. Now, this might show something like a head and shoulders pattern. And you might look at it and go, that doesn't look like a head and shoulders pattern to me, but algorithmically what the software is showing is it's saying it's a head and shoulders pattern. You still want to do your due diligence, the rest of your technical analysis to confirm, is it something that you want to be trading on. Now, last but not least, so let me pull back up this this other chart that I had. Let's see, because I want to then demonstrate, and I want to wrap it up with saving a chart. So let's say you want to save this chart. You simply right here, this floppy disk. For those of you that are old enough to recognize it's a floppy disk, I know there's some younger people in the audience that for you it's just the save icon, that you might not have actually seen a floppy disk in person. You click on that save icon, you can come down here to save chart, and you can then rename this chart to whatever you want. So we'll call this blank 2. We'll hit save. Now, if I come here to charts, we'll actually see this blank 2 chart on here with PPO, MACD, and everything, and we'll do QQQ this time. And notice everything's saved, these different tabs. We'll come to the Today tab, and it has my RSI, MACD, PPO already saved on here for me. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to add it every time because it saved it like that. In addition, if you draw on the chart, we'll draw like this. And we'll come here and we'll do save. Sometimes it can be finicky with this, so we'll hit save chart. We'll save that chart. Blank 2 already exists. Yes, let's overwrite. We'll come here to charts. Blank 2. QQQ. Come back to this Today tab. And we can see our box that we drew on the chart. It is saved there. Keep in mind, though, drawings are per symbol. So if we shift over to SPY, it's not going to have that drawing symbol on the chart. So the ability to save your charts, I think is also pretty powerful. That's so you're not having to recreate the wheel. That's why we'll have some charts up here that, we have, one of our default charts is just, it's a 6-month chart. It's just blank with the small change of, yes, it's 6 months versus a year, but it's candlesticks versus open, high, low, close. Because most of us on the desk prefer candlesticks. That way we don't have to every time change, when a blank chart, we don't have to every time change the settings to be candlesticks. We also have another basic chart here that we have pulled up. And on this basic chart, we'll add SPY. It's things like, those moving averages, 20, 50, 200 moving average, Bollinger Bands, RSI on here. There are some other charts that we have saved where some of us on the desk have, maybe saved some of the more personalized charts on here. I know Troy has a chart that's saved up here that has some of his indicators that he likes to use. It might be a little bit of a different tweak compared to some of the other charts we have saved. A really, really valuable tool so that you're not having to recreate the wheel every time and spend, 10 minutes, setting up your chart just to use it. You can just open it and you're good to go. You're good to start trading. You're good to start doing your analysis. With that, though, that does bring us to the end of our time that we have. I do want to share a couple additional things with the class. So first is, and so I do want to reiterate that we have covered all the material that we plan to cover today. So if anybody, if you need to drop off, please feel free to drop off. There's nothing else that we're going to cover that hasn't already been said, hasn't already been shown. But I do want to touch on and answer a couple of questions that came in. First is how to access the technical indicator guide. So this is the Learning Center, just News and Research, Learning Center. It doesn't matter where you are in the Learning Center, always it has these tabs over here. If you come to Topics, Advanced Trading, Technical Indicator Guide is right there. That's how you can access the Technical Indicator Guide. In addition, I'm going to come back to the home page on here, and we'll type up getting started with ATP is what we'll type on here. And I always get kind of mixed up on, there's different things you can search for, different ways you can pull this up. But I'm going to open up this first video, AccuTrader Pro, getting started. And you see these 4 on-demand videos, 1, 2, 3, 4, advanced charting capabilities. If you'd like to rewatch what we did today, right here. If you missed last week, placing and monitoring trades, right there as well. I think I helped with a couple of these videos and such, so you might see my face, hear my voice again. Keep in mind though with these that since we did do these just for the recording, I do believe we skipped the homework on these. And so if you go back and you watch this one, rewatch today's, rewatch last week's, we don't cover the homework with these videos, but it can be a great way to refresh a little bit of what we addressed, what we talked about. So hopefully it helps answer some of the other questions we had that came in. Troy, any last thoughts you have to kind of wrap us up and take us home for the day?
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. I just want to encourage you, if you've never used AccuTrader Pro, again, this is meant to be kind of a survey class covering a lot of the key topics of AccuTrader Pro. At the end of the day, you can watch a lot of these demonstrations. We would encourage you, play around with the tool, repeat and doodle within a chart and try some of the features that you saw us demonstrate today. It's not going to click immediately. It'll take some time. I've seen a couple comments saying, hey, I'd like to watch this again. You can certainly watch these pre-recordings that Nick showed us. You can also join us next month. We host these classes every single month just because we have a recurring list of clients that are interested in this topic. So feel free to join us again in the future. Sometimes you'll discover, and even myself using AccuTrader Pro for several years, I occasionally come across little features that I wasn't quite aware of. So if it's not clicking immediately, give it some time, play around with some of these tools, make some adjustments, save some layout changes, and be sure to join us in some of our other sessions. If you join us in a market briefing or maybe some other coaching class, you'll a lot of times see us use a lot of these tools. You might see some of our own layouts. It might be a good idea kind of process to say, hey, I might want to do something similar, or, that's interesting. I might do it a little differently. That can always be a good kind of help in terms of how you might create your own layout, what kind of tools you might consider using as well. But it's been a pleasure, Nick. Look forward to, I believe I'll be in the next week. I'm actually not sure if I'll be in the next class, but next week I know is the option tools, which are also very, very popular in terms of some of the value proposition of using AccuTrader Pro. So for those of you who join us today, make sure to join us next week for the option tools. That's, I know, a very popular class as well.
I did check the calendar. Troy, you are scheduled to be back with me next week for the option tools. A couple other quick hits I want to mention to kind of build upon what you were saying. We've had a couple people mentioned that they really like these classes and would like to even attend them again. As Troy mentioned, we do offer this particular class every month. In July, we see it's going to actually be on Tuesdays versus Thursdays in July. It will be, the same noon time frame, except on Tuesdays versus Thursdays in July. You can learn more and register here on the site. Again, fidelity.com/classrooms or simply events and classes. Speaking about some other 4-week-long classes, since we touched on indicators today, we always get people asking us about how I can learn more about using those indicators. Well, we have a 4-week-long class on technical analysis they'll be kicking off. It's a great introductory class to that. Now, I know week 3 is really where they get into all the different types of indicators, and then we do then have our one-off classes, our coaching sessions, where we kind of take what we spend an hour on a week 3, and then we do separate 4 different 1-hour sections on that information to kind of digest that even more. And in addition, coming here to events, and there are market briefings. These are those briefings that Troy was talking about, and they're a great way to, not only stay informed of what's going on, but can actually see us utilize AccuTrader Pro and charting in real time. And they're great informative sessions with that. I know that this afternoon, Jake will be here with Chase for the aftermarket briefing. And one thing that we'll do is, in addition to going through what happened throughout the day, we'll pull up symbols and we'll take a look at symbols, and we'll do look at trend, look at support and resistance on different symbols to kind of take a look at, well, what are traders looking at with those things to really kind of apply some of those lessons that we teach with technical analysis. With that, though, we are about 10 minutes past time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending an hour and 15 minutes of your afternoon and your morning with us. Hopefully this is a good value use of your time. And we definitely look forward to seeing you next week or in some of our other future classes. Take care, everyone.